to sign in because you're in the Zoom. We have you already registered. So no worries about all those things. And we'll talk more about CTLE at the end of today. But for now, it looks like Diana's already set up. So Diana, thank you. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Jose. And also so nice to see you in here. So welcome everybody again. This is the Leading Beyond Access, Making Inclusivity part of your EdTech strategy as we move forward. It's been an extremely exciting year and a half almost at this point. And just want to say that
thanks again to everyone for
let me get back over here. As we move forward into the next school year, we're going to bring this one to a wrap. And we want to make sure that we're planning to make sure that we have looked back, we're reflecting on everything that we've learned this year and adding that to what we've learned preceding this, and that we're ready to renew and come back as strong as we can be and with as much knowledge and change that we have learned is necessary to be teaching our students in this 2020 and beyond. We're looking at 2030, 2035. So one of the first things I would like you to do as we think about where are we going beyond today, in that chat, if you could think about your youngest student in your district or in your school and write down what year will that student be graduating from high school. So once again, in the chat, if you could think about the youngest student, the grade level, either within your district, your school, your classroom, what year will they be graduating? And I'm seeing 2027, 2028 coming in, 2026, 26 again. We have any of the little wee ones in there. We have anybody who's going to be an elementary going up to 2030. So most of this is late in this decade. So another 2031, fantastic. 2040, is that even possible? Nothing like feeling like what years mean, right? So as we look forward, we look beyond where we are right now. Let's think about these students and what we are actually preparing them for, and how do we meet the needs of all students. I'm Diana Gross, and I just want to share that I am for those people who may not be able to see me, I am a Caucasian woman. My hair is about shoulder length. I am in my home office, which is blue, a light blue, and I am wearing a light blue cardigan with llamas on it because that's what I put on when it's a rainy day. I've had the pleasure of working within education for the past 20 years and worked within technology within that whole time, beginning as a classroom teacher, where I would go into the library and literally get a Blu-ray player and maybe one of the 5 discs and roll that into the room, and students would get excited about that. And then I've been able and had the opportunity to work around the world using the mobile technologies that we are now implementing throughout New York City to reach some of the most remote learners in the world. And some of the most remote learners, I have to say, are also here in New York City. So let's see what it is that we can be looking at and how we meet the needs of all these students so that none of our students feel remote. So I want to start out with these 2 words, go beyond. I was extremely excited when we started planning for this session about these words. What does it mean to go beyond? And so just think about that. What do we have to understand in order to say we're going beyond here? And what does that opportunity mean for us? And what does it feel like? Oftentimes, the future can feel exciting. We can, I'm hearing there's conversation. Are you having trouble hearing me?
No, we hear you well, Diana. Keep going, continue.
Okay, great. So what does it mean? So sometimes that future is a little bit around opportunity, excitement. And I started thinking the past month and talking to a lot of friends and colleagues and family members, what has caused us in our lives to go beyond our current thinking, the current status quo? And a lot of my friends, and myself included, have been inspired by artists, by writers, by innovators, people who are taking something that has been in place and use it in a different way, an innovative type of learning. So this year, in 2020, we had the opportunity, and it was painful, but you all did it. And I want to say to you, give yourselves a round of applause. We have essentially gone into an emergency remote teaching and learning throughout the United States. For those of us here in New York City, understand what an incredible undertaking that was. And we've managed to do it. And it's actually thrust us into an exciting opportunity to have moved ourselves along in what many people plan out as a one-to-one laptop or device program, so that all students can be connected to resources beyond the classroom, beyond that physical space. And so I want to take a little bit of time to say, where were we? Where are we now? And then where do we want to go? How do we want to harness so much of this information and so much of what we have learned? And this is a little bit of dated information right now, but there's a lot coming out. And one of the opportunities I have at CDWG is to spend some time looking at the research. What has changed? Back in last March through June of 2020, Dr. Julie Evans added the Project Tomorrow Speak Up research program. They were interviewing schools and stakeholders and education districts around the country. And she compiled 4 different executive summaries that all came out of this digital learning during the pandemic and the transformation that was happening. And she says that while digital tools, this is a mindset, had become more commonplace in our schools before 2020, the vast majority of educators were not visualizing technology as an effective delivery mechanism. So what does that mean for us as we move forward? Has your thinking shifted? And go ahead and drop into the chat. What are some of the ways that you have started to see technology in a different way? And let's keep out some of the, there's a lot of frustrations, but what has it allowed students to be able to do? What has it allowed for us to be able to reach certain students? There are some students in New York City, one of them, Joshua Stern, who was on a stakeholder panel at our CDW Modern Day Classroom event back in February, who is a disabled student. And he has taught me so much in the past 3 months about what it means for him to now have teachers who understand that a PDF is not that difficult to make. Let's make a PDF. It makes it easy for him to read and easy for him to interact using his assistive technology. So I'd love to hear some of the things that you are seeing and hearing from your students, because this is a day for us to really reflect. And we've gone through the challenges, but what have been some of the opportunities? Because really that's what this is about. It's emerging education transformation. So there's evidence of new beliefs and values, and those will propel us into the new ways about thinking, about learning, about innovating, about living. And that is what we kind of want to focus on today. What does it mean to lead in that time period? So transition planning, this is one of the themes of today. So what we need to do is start assessing where is our district, where are our schools at? That means resources. So what is all the technology that we have purchased this year? What are the PO orders that will still be coming in? I believe there's over 300,000 Chromebooks that have been ordered and are being delivered. We have interactive flat panels. This is across the country. Technology in the education K-12 sector, by necessity, had to increase because we needed to be able to teach remotely. And the other thing to be looking at as we're thinking about leadership into the future is the human aspect. So any design thinking always has to come back to humans. And those are all of our stakeholders. Everybody from teachers to staff in the offices, to the nurses, to the students, to their parents, to their caregivers. Everybody in that community, how are we going to harness all of the technology that we have now and be able to cross over some boundaries that may have been there? And there's been incredible conversations going on Tuesday afternoons with Gina Cesario is having, she's sharing out panels, and they're called Insight panels, and anyone is welcome to join them. But what have we learned, and what are things that we want to hold on to as we move forward? The next topic I want to talk about is assistive technology. What is it and who needs it? I would like to see, I'm kind of getting a little bit stuck. I think my chat is frozen here. I see there's 230 new messages, but I'm unable to actually see everything. So, but I would love to know, and I'm sorry this isn't in person, but what is assistive technology? What do you know on a scale of 1 to 10? How much do you know about what assistive technology is? Is there any assistive technology that you actually have in the classroom right now? Are there needs? So I'm seeing, okay, it's coming through now. There's 5, some people have an 8, a 0, an 8, a 6, a 5. And this is perfect. This is what I love about New York City Department of Education and the community. I've watched over the past year as Jojo Farrell and others from the Department of Information and Technology have been having Google events at night and Microsoft events at night, and people are gathering and talking about what have we learned, and they're sharing. The Facebook page is incredible. It really is bringing control of education to ourselves as educators and allowing us to really support one another. So it's a resource that helps children learn. One of my students just received his own technology, is able to speak to his classmates. There is such an incredible amount out there. So somebody is able to be drawing on here. Please avoid drawing on it. So what is the difference between assistive technology and instructional technology? Assistive technology is a specific device that allows students with a disability to interact in the educational space without any further, in a way that will not inhibit any of their learning, any of their ability to interact with that learning contact, with that learning environment. Instructional technology is a piece of technology that is available to all students, all learners, all educators in that learning environment. Assistive technology is provided through a student's IEP. And the process of that you're all familiar with. And while many students will need assistive technology, not every student certainly needs it. And so one of the things that the Center for Assistive Technologies in New York City is looking to do is raise more awareness around the fact that there's so many accessibility features within our technology and the instructional technology that is already there. So let's raise awareness around what is able to be turned on at a school level. What technology do we have that will enable accessibility for all students? And one of the things that's most exciting to me, I took a course recently at Johns Hopkins University called Assistive Technology for All Learners. And it really looked at this, it's where one of the places I was first introduced to universal design for learning, which we'll talk about. But how do we provide student agency? How do we help them to understand what do they need best? You know, for so many years, 40, 50, 60 years, we as the adults have been determining what was going to work best for this child and what type of supports do they need. With the neuroscience and our fMRIs, or our ability now within the past 10 to 15 years to really understand what's happening in that brain, we are able to understand that the brain is completely different. Every single brain is different. Neurodiversity is real. So one of the things I like to promote and suggest here is that as a leader, as we lead into the next school year, let's make sure that we understand professional development on what's the difference between assistive technology and instructional, and creating learning units on the built-in accessibility features of the technology that's already in your school. And just as a reminder, today from 2 to 3 p.m., Laura Oganda, who's a program manager for the Office of Digital Literacy Inclusion, is providing today a workshop on introduction to digital accessibility. So she's going to be looking over what is accessibility, how is it different from inclusion, and looking at the compliance deadlines at New York City, because New York City and New York State are leaders in this field. What are those deadlines? Also, right after this at 10 o'clock, Annie Nash from Google is leading a 30-minute session on Google accessibility features for diverse learners, for Chromebooks, and also within the workspace for education. So take a look at those and start thinking about how do we bring that in. Imagine the power of a student, and we understand neuroscience and the social emotional learning underpinnings of learning. And we know that if students are not socially or emotionally healthy, then they are not going to be learning the academics. We call it non-academics of learning. If we allow every student, we know that they need to belong and they need to feel that they fit in. So if we remove barriers, if a student doesn't hear well, if a student doesn't see well, if a student is learning differently, how can we very quietly, with a device in front of them, allow them to access what we're showing on the screen, what we're showing on our interactive flat panels? Promethean is also running a workshop today. If the teacher is in the front of the room and a student is halfway back and can't see it or can't hear or needs to change the contrast, if we're allowing a screen share, if we're sharing that out, that student can make the adjustments necessary without raising their hand and saying, I can't see it, I can't understand it. And so let's help them help themselves. Just to check over here, we need to be provided for all students. Device would have to be modified to match child's needs. Exactly, I love what's going on here in the chat. We certainly need to be allowing students to understand it. And I think one of the easiest lifts for us as educators, it takes some learning, but you have a workshop right after this on the accessibility features. Join Laura's later on today. Let's take a look at what do we already have at our disposal. Also reach out to me, reach out to your CDW reps. We're talking a lot these days about what does it mean to have a modern day classroom? What kind of headsets? What about the audio just being boosted throughout the room? There's little ways of doing this that will remove, 5, 10 years ago, we had students sitting off in a corner with a big machine or big headsets on. This is now all, students are accustomed to headsets. Students are accustomed to having devices in front of them. Let's make sure that we harness that when we come back in. Just checking out what's being said here. I love this conversation. Hopefully we'll be able to review it later. So let's look at designing accessible digital content. What does that mean? And here is the universal design for learning. And I would like to have, and I see someone saying we have to protect our students' hearing health. Absolutely. This is all part of, I think that's actually when I was in my 20 years ago, Walkmans came out and people were saying, you're going to destroy your head, your hearing. So we need to be supporting students in understanding what it means. In the chat, I would like to see on a scale of 1 to 10, universal design for learning. How familiar are you with it, and how likely are you to be implementing it within your school? At this point, let's just stick with students. When we're delivering our content, when we are teaching, when we're asking them to demonstrate what they're learning. Scale of 1 to 10, again, we're going from 0, 3, 7, 8, 5. Yeah, we have such a wide range here. To me, universal design for learning is one of the most equalizing frameworks that exists within education. And when I first encountered it about 5 years ago, I just thought, this is it. We are taking the neuroscience. We're taking what we're able to see within the brain. We're taking the motivation piece. What is the stimuli that's motivating? We're looking at the what. How are we connecting? How are we creating those neural pathways between the different cortexes? And then the how of learning. How are we having that prefrontal cortex process what they've brought in? And how are we allowing students to show us in different ways? They were losing my audio. Okay. I may switch over and come off the headset for a minute. So I highly recommend that we start looking at inclusivity and accessibility through the universal design for learning headlines. All right, people can still hear me. Thank you. Yes, I will share out a copy of the presentation and some resources as well. I know I'm talking about a lot here. I am a resource from CDWG, Learning Innovation Strategist with a background in that, who can work with your school leadership on any of these types of concepts. But let's get a plan. That's the most important thing. So I'm covering a lot here, but don't worry, I will share this out. So this is from CAF. Universal Design for Learning Guidelines. It takes some time. It takes working it through, having a professional learning network, having groups, department chairs, working through this together, having leadership, instructional coaches. But it's really fantastic. It can align with Bloom's taxonomy. It can align with SAMR, but it really will address so many different ways of meeting the needs of various learners. Thank you. Another less known theory, which is actually one of the most simple, and it really helped me understand the neuroscience of what it means to take in information. It's a cognitive theory of multimedia learning. This is Mayer's 2006, and he has updated it since. He was a force in neuroscience and cognitive learning. Scale 1 to 10, how comfortable are you with cognitive theory of learning? Here we've got a 9, fantastic, 10, great. And I know we're coming down to the end here. We started a few minutes late, but I don't want to hold up the next one. The concept is basically, and we can talk more about it, is that we have different channels coming in. Words are coming in through our ears, pictures through our eyes. If we start to cross them, we start putting videos and flashing and bling bling and lots of colors and words, and we're talking at the same time, the brain cannot process it. It starts to jam it, like too many highways coming together at one time. Designing for accessibility, I keep looking for how do we break down? There's so much to know. I'm trying really hard and leading my team at CDW on accessibility features, on inclusivity, and what does it mean? There's so much out there. How do we break it down and make it meaningful? This is a resource that comes from our friends across the pond in the UK. It comes, and it just is some, and I'll share these out. There's the link at the bottom. So when you get this presentation, you'll have that as well. But it really breaks down what are some simple things for students with a physical or motor disability. This is specifically the primary resource is for website design, but it certainly works for your Google Classroom setting up. It works for any digital content that you're creating and sharing out with your parents and community members as well. So transition planning, make a plan. What is the framework that we want to be consistent with in our schools or a school, your grade level, and then provide that professional development for that. So the last topic here is information fluency and digital literacy. And again, New York State is really leading in this stuff and these topics, but this is the future. We put down there, some of your students are graduating in 2040. Imagine how different things were 19 years ago. We didn't have smartphones at that time. Facebook was not around, I believe. Get in there. Okay. So we are taking a look at the emerging job predictions. Take a look at this. Anyone who's seen any of my presentations, I talk about this a lot. Why are we here? What are we doing? Someone says parents need workshops too. Look at this, data analysts, scientists, AI and machine learning specialists. How much are these skills? Where do we see ourselves teaching them? Cloud computing, artificial intelligence. This comes from 2019, actual top skills that were hired in LinkedIn or advertised for. And this is the 2025 prediction from the World Economic Forum. These are the top 8 job skills that we're looking for. Analytical thinking, innovation, complex problem solving, active learning, creativity, initiative. How are we doing that? Of course, our friends at the State Library, New York State Libraries, has come up with this information fluency. If we take a look over at that cycle of inquiry and learning, not only is this connecting so many parts of the brain and creating neural pathways for these students that will serve them in the future, but it's also engaging them. It goes right back to universal design for learning. So what are some of the resources that you have there? Let's look at the instructional resources. What is your STEM program looking like? What is your summer enrichment program looking like? Tech will be speaking this afternoon at the CDW booth on their summer rising programs. I love the Rube Goldberg machine. Doesn't take any technology, but it keeps students engaged in that information literacy. We've got robotics field day. And then one of the rising stars in K through 12 right now, and actually in sports, is esports. There are 589 people in 2020 watched esports in action. We're looking at universities giving scholarships. We're looking at fields and sectors growing up around this esports, people who are reporting on it, who are creating it, who are competing in it, who are writing about it, all of it. So last piece here, what's the transition planning for that? Assess the resources currently in place at your school. What is the technology and the curriculum? Joe McAllister from CDW will be speaking at 11 o'clock over in the CDW booth. 10:30, maybe 11, but in the next break, go ahead over to our CDW booth, and he is phenomenal. He's out there talking to all sorts of organizations around the country. And finally, I just want to say for your transition planning for next year, it may seem like a lot. We may be looking for that last day of school, and then yes, take a week or two, relax, reflect, and then let's get to that transition planning. Let's start thinking, how do we want to move forward? What do we want to hold on to this? You are not alone in this. New York City Department of Education has phenomenal resources. I am continually meeting more and more people within the department who are working on this. Center for Assistive Technology, digital inclusion, DIT, just phenomenal stuff. We are in this together. Let's stay together on it. And please reach out for support and guidance. And we can learn together on this. I'm continuing to learn. I think we will all do that. And as Ina Bob Henry says here, remember, this is about accessibility. Not all children are the same. And I would even go further and say, not two children are the same. Every single brain is different. Thank you so very, very much. Please reach out to me, Diane Grow at CDWG.com. And I'm happy to talk with you later on. Quick 30 minutes. You all are wonderful. Keep being amazing and shine on.